Welcome to Fly on the Wall podcast. I'm your host, Chris Sonksen, and I'm also the CEO and founder of Church Boom. Today, you get to be a part of a live coaching session with a pastor who's facing the same type of struggles and concerns that you're facing. If you enjoy today's podcast, make sure to give us a like, a share, or a subscribe. It's a joy today to sit down with my good friend, Dereck Owens. I've been coaching him for years. And today we're talking about how to deal with conflict in ministry, which we all deal with. I hope you enjoy the coaching conversation. But how's everything going, man? We'll jump into it. How's everything going for you?
Things are really going well. They really are.
Good.
We're doing good. Church is good. Church is, it's weird since COVID, kind of coming back and everybody kind of getting in a groove. And it's been a strange season, but things are going good, man. We have people saved every week.
Wow,
our assimilation program,
love it.
Really getting them into the life of the church is probably better now than it's ever been. And so good. They're going well.
That's awesome. Well, that's awesome, man. You're doing an incredible job. And for those that are checking out the podcast, this is my man, Dereck. He is in Tucumcari, New Mexico.
Right, big city.
And, it's if you ever go there, there's a motel there that has color TV.
That's right.
They're upgrading. We
got current, right? We got current.
That's right. It's amazing. Anyway, man, how can I serve you today? What's on your mind?
Oh, Chris, I appreciate your willingness to be able to walk through some things with us. And for a long time, we've been connected, and I thought I'd throw a few things at you today. We're creating authentic teammates, those close connections that we've had a lot of people that have been close to us over the years that are in the church, and we want that to be beneficial both ways. We never want to use people.
Right.
We use things, not people, right? So we don't want to use people, but along the journey, we need things out of people. We need them to serve. We need them to be a part. And we just, when things get tough, like when there's difficulty, when there's difference of opinion, help me walk through that in a way that's productive for both of us.
And so you're, just so I'm understanding it clearly, you're talking about, Dereck, hey, we're in the ministry. We've got some key leaders. Is that what you're saying? And then, but when we walk through difficulty, is that, now when you're talking about walking through difficulty, you're talking about walking through difficulty with them as leaders or with a subject in the church?
Probably more with them as leaders, just walking through some things in their personal life as we disciple them, or, trying to take them to that next level also, and you bring some correction, or you bring a challenge, and we do it obviously very kindly, pull them aside one-on-one. We do all the appropriate steps, but it seems like in the last couple of years, especially, normally when that happens, there's some distance right away, and we've noticed some pushback, and I don't know what that is. I've never experienced that really before. We've been able to navigate it, but suddenly it's more of an issue. So.
Yeah. Well, I think there's a few things to consider, Dereck. One is you may have, and I've talked about this on other podcasts, you may have unintentionally somewhere in the relationship, you've confused friendship and leadership. One thing I always say is when you put friendship in front of leadership, you're going to get hurt. Because when you end up friendship causes us to maybe delay things. I'm not saying you did that.
Yep.
It causes us to delay conversation, causes us to put off conversations, causes us to avoid conversations. And then it gets so big that we have the conversation, then they don't receive it well because they're not receiving it from their leader, they're receiving it from their friend. And when they're receiving it from your friend, it's receiving it from an equal. When it's receiving it from a leader, you're receiving it from someone that is above in authority, spiritual authority. So I think sometimes that can happen, and I've talked about that quite a bit. I think that's such an important thing to remember, that you have to choose leadership over friendship, and a lot of people don't like that, and a lot of people that sounds, I don't know, just doesn't sound good or right, but it is right. And it doesn't mean that you're not friends with them, but you also have to make sure that you understand the leadership place with them. you have to understand that, but they have to understand that as well. And that might be in a situation where they're not really understanding
No,
that.
I think that's right. I think there's two things that you said. I think sometimes we have allowed things to go too far, too long without saying something, hoping that we'd see the change or the turn, and it just not be the case. And then the other thing is that it's when you're almost too close, that it's hard to bring connection. That balance between leadership and friendship. I think that's really, really, really good. How do I help my leaders, my staff? How do I help them see that with people that they're trying to lead?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think one, you're going to have to see it in yourself.
Okay.
One thing I always say is a leader's got to define reality and they have to take responsibility.
Yeah.
They got to define reality, take responsibility. You got to take that in yourself. You got to operate that inside of yourself. But then I think you have to start teaching that with your team as well. Guys, there's a difference where you're able to be the person's friend, but then also you're able to lead.
Yeah.
And so the relationship is this, and then it becomes this. It's almost like, it's interesting because when you parent, this is you parent a lot this way. It's like they're 8-year-old and they're learning, they're 10-year-old and they're learning. At some point you start parenting this way. You become more of a friend that they listen to. And that happens in parenting. What happens in leadership is we end up with this and we lose this. Mm-hmm. And we have to realize that you want to be friends with the people you're doing ministry with. Of course you do. But yet on the other hand, you have to be able to lead them. And I think that your team needs to understand that. Well, guys, we have to be able to recognize the early signs of drifting or problem and address it early. Very similar to the book that I wrote, Saving Your Church from Itself. Mm-hmm. The whole point is read the signs early of drifting. When you see the problem in June, you don't wait until November to have the conversation. Yeah. You have the conversation when you see the problem. And I think that is part of that Matthew 18 principle you and I have talked about many times. Getting your key leaders to say, hey guys, we're gonna live by the Matthew 18 principle, and we're not putting off stuff. Now, we're gonna be mean or rude, we're gonna do it right, but we're not gonna put off stuff for months and months. The longer they put it off, the worse it's going to get. And then, so that's problem number one. And then if they don't recognize that there's friendship, but there's also leadership. And I think your team has to recognize that, or you're going to, one thing I always say is that you have to have candor and you have to have care. But if you have one without the other, you're going to have trouble.
Yeah.
That's good. If you have candor without care, you'll always have distance. If you have so you take a leader, it's like, I got no problem having the honest conversation. I'll say whatever I need to say. You got those people like that in your life. That's candor. Yes. They don't have much care. So what they'll have with their team is distance. No one wants to be around them because there's too much candor. If you have care, where it's like, man, we're friends, we hang out, I'm there for them, I love them, but we don't have any candor. We have the care, but we don't have the candor, you'll have dysfunction.
That's good.
And it'll be dysfunctional because it's all based on, we're just friends, but there's no honesty, there's no leadership, there's no leading. So if you have the care without the candor, problem. If you have, you're going to have a dysfunction. But if you have care and candor together, which is so important, it is. That'll always equal development.
That's good.
It's a developing relationship that's healthy. That's important for you. It's important for you to teach your team.
Absolutely, yeah. Because my team right now, the leaders, and I'm so proud, man. We've done a really good job over the last couple of years, really getting leaders around us to lead their departments or whatever the case is. For a long time, we kind of solo led everything. We had our hands in everything. Every conversation was ours. And that just wasn't healthy. And how things have progressed, it's so good. But continuing to be reminded to teach those things to our leaders, it's huge, because now what I'm having, I actually had a meeting Sunday where I had some people come to me and said, hey, in this one area, this is what I'm hearing. This is what I'm, and And so I had to go to that leader and say, hey, this is what's going on. And they said, well, why aren't they coming to me? Why are they still going to you? And I think some of that is the issue is I just haven't taught them yet to open those doors of conversation and to allow them to come to them as the leader. We've positioned them, but maybe I need to take it another step.
That's good. That's good that you're recognizing that. And it's good for their development too as leaders to have that from you. You're recognizing it. Now you got to teach them and train them. Like, hey, here's what we're looking for. Give them that recipe, care and candor, candor and care. They both have to be together. Otherwise, you're going to have distance or dysfunction.
Yeah, that's really good.
And they, a lot of people will, and I think it's important, just a little side note too, Dereck, that you're able to say, if someone, maybe you're teaching your leaders or maybe having a one-on-one with a leader that you're teaching them how to do this. If there's any pushback, not in a negative way, you might want to circle in on that. Like, what is it in you that you find it difficult to address the conversation?
Okay.
Why is there a reason? Can you just help me understand the reason that you avoid conflict? Like those kind of statements, I think need to happen because most people, it's going to be the avoidance of conflict. They don't want it.
Sure.
And, if you have 10 leaders in a room, 2 of them don't mind conflict and they look forward to it too much. You've had to those people. And then there's a couple that, whatever, but there's always 4 or 5. There's always a good amount of people that they're just, I don't want to deal with the conflict. I don't want to handle. And that is, this is a bold statement, so you got to be careful how you say it. But when you say, I don't want to deal with the conflict, it isn't because I don't want to make them uncomfortable and I don't want to, it to be odd and I don't want it to be friction and all the other things that the conflict creates. Here's a little statement to tuck away in the back of your mind that when you're unwilling to do that, it is an extremely selfish motive.
Yeah.
And people are like, what do you mean it's selfish? I just don't want conflict. Okay, so here's what I understand. Because you don't want to be uncomfortable.
Yes.
Because you don't want to be put in a place of tension. Because you want to save yourself from that feeling, you'll sacrifice the health of the organization and the health of that person.
Yeah.
Because you are uncomfortable with it. It really is. People don't realize it, but the avoidance of conflict is driven, one of the characteristics is driven by selfishness because I don't want to be uncomfortable because I don't want to feel that way. We're not going to have this conversation and make the church healthy.
Yeah. Yeah, it's probably one of the more difficult things in leadership is to be able to navigate conflict in a good way and not beat people up in the process and not be overwhelmed in the process too, where you're just destroyed and emotionally having to navigate it. That's part of probably being an emotionally healthy person, but leaders have to deal with conflict. It's part of it.
Oh my gosh. If you avoid conflict, you're driving towards an incredible amount of artificial harmony.
Oh, no doubt.
Yep, you'll have that. So what else can I help you with, man? What's else on your mind?
Well, a question that I actually asked my wife. I was like, hey, I would love for you to help me throw a question to Pastor Chris. And one of the things that she said, and over the 2 years that from COVID, I think a lot of churches have dealt with this, but when do we let go? Part of what COVID did is it kind of defined who's really with you, who's really here authentically. But man, when do you let go? How do you process that emotionally? I mean, I've been at this now for almost 25 years, and I'm still struggling with but they're family, I've poured my life into them. Yeah. We love them. We want to serve them. They're on a prayer card that I keep, that I'm praying for them all the time. But they've invested almost nothing in months, right? So how do we do that? And when they've clearly left, but you can't stop thinking about it, what do you do?
Yep. Yeah, boy, I think that that's a lot like parenting, at some point, do you let them figure it out on their own? It's, if they're 10 years old, that's one thing. But when you're still a parent and they're 30 years old, there's times where they got to figure it out on their own. Yeah. You still love them, figure it out on their own. my mind goes to Luke 15, 3 parables: the lost coin, the lost sheep, and the lost son. It's interesting, Dereck, that in 2 of the 3 parables, there's 3 parables in that story: lost sheep, lost coin, lost son. The lost coin and the lost sheep, they were sought after.
Yeah.
We're going to go after you. So we're going to tear the house upside down to find the lost coin. We're going to leave the 99 to find the one, the lost sheep. So we, the shepherd in the lost sheep especially, is going to go out and find them. Interestingly, the 3rd parable, the father deemed it wiser not to leave his house and to wait for his son to come back to him.
Wow. It's true.
The difference literally in 1 chapter, the shepherd goes after the sheep, and in the very next parable, the shepherd, the master, the father stays and says, no, I'll just wait at the end of the road for them to come back.
Yeah.
And I think, honestly, we're there at COVID. It's like, okay, I've tried. It doesn't mean I don't love them anymore. Doesn't mean I don't, care for them anymore. I'm going to pray for them anymore.
Yeah.
But I'm sure in the heck, I'm not going to be focused on them. I'm not putting all my energy and phone calls and emails and texts to that group anymore. I'm moving on. Now I'm taking the position of the lost son, where I, Dereck, and Gail, the shepherd, we're going to stand at the edge of the road and we're waiting for you to come back.
Yeah.
And there's a difference in those all 3 parables, but that difference is in that 1 out of the 3 parables, he deemed it wiser to stay home and to wait. And I think that's where we're at.
I do too. I really do too. It's been a struggle, probably between myself and my wife, knowing that there's people out there that seemingly they still probably call this their home, right?
Right.
But yet we don't feel like we have a pastoral place in their life simply because they've walked away for so long now. There's distance that's created that separation. And that's a struggle. So
it is, and
I wish
you still
knew, right?
Oh my gosh,
we really do care.
Yes, I think you don't want to be you want to be a blessing, not a burden.
Yes.
And you want to just, hey, you know what? We're not going to text them all the time. We're just going to text them once in a while.
No doubt.
And in that parable, I think it's important to communicate with your wife as well, that the father deemed it wiser, or the shepherd, if you want to call him, the father deemed it wiser to stand on the edge of the road and wait for them to come back. There is a point where that's the wiser move. Clearly in the parables, that's what defined the difference. The other thing was, what did he wait for? Unfortunately, he waited for a pivotal point in the son's life where tragedy struck and tragedy brought him home.
Yeah.
That's probably what will happen with some of the people that have not returned.
Yeah.
Tragedy will bring them
Those
home.
moments.
It's unfortunate. Yeah, we don't want that. But it was tragedy that drove the son home.
Sure it was.
And tragedy will drive them home.
Oh.
It's not going to drive them to the Kiwanis Club.
No.
It's going to drive them to your church.
Absolutely.
And it will. Yeah, the day will come. And you'll be there on the edge of the road waiting for them to come back and hug them when they return, just like the parents.
We love them. We miss them. We want them here.
Yeah.
We want to be pouring into their family, their lives, but it seems like other things have got their attention. And we hope that tragedy doesn't have to be the thing, but if that's it, I guess we'll be here when they return.
We don't want that, but I think there's a lot of wisdom in those 3 parables when you start separating them out and see the responses that are different. And you also see in the response where the father waited, what had to happen. And we don't want that to happen, but the father knew.
Oh, yeah.
You know what? He ain't coming back. Now I can go hunt him down, but man, he's got money in his pocket and he's enjoying life. But the day will come where he thinks of me.
Yes.
And he'll come home. And I think that's where, 2 years have passed. And I mean, enough time has passed that we're on to that parable now.
Absolutely.
We're not on the 99 to find the one. We're on the, okay, well, we tried to find you. You didn't come back. We're here when you want to come back.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that's good.
And it's unfortunate,
that's good.
but it's the truth.
We just got to remind ourselves of that, yes.
Exactly.
We've done
Don't beat ourselves up over the head.
awesome. Man.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. What else you got? Anything else you want to talk about today?
Yeah, let's hit one more. Let's say, there's, teams. We have so many people serving on teams right now. Literally, we have close to 50% of the people that attend our services serving on some sort of team. So, so the team leads, that's the connection with them is going good. But I would like to see them take more ownership in that, and because right now what we're doing is we're kind of having to continue to stay on top of them to continue to facilitate that connection with so many people, and I told somebody recently, I'm like, we might have too many people on teams. That's no pastor says that, but it's hard to at this point right now to keep our leaders really engaged with their team, because it's almost like when a small group's gotten too big, it's hard to manage. So what are some thoughts there?
Yeah. Yeah. And you're talking about how, and just so I'm clear, are you talking about how to take care of that team?
Really?
How to take care of those volunteers?
How to encourage them to take care of their teams at a higher level, rather than just, we've scheduled them.
Oh,
you know what I
mean? Yeah. So yep.
The difference between a manager and a leader.
That's it. We've talked about that before. Yep. Yeah, we got a bunch of managers with leadership titles. I think it's important. Two things. One, you're going to have to start changing the yard markers in the game. Okay. And if you just say to people, take care of your team better, what does that mean? They're going to interpret that totally different. Yeah. You need to love your team more. You need to connect with them more. What does that mean? If you don't start saying, look, here's what I'm expecting monthly or quarterly or weekly. Look, here's what I expect every 2 weeks, every 4 weeks, every 12 weeks, or whatever it is that you want to do, whatever rhythm you want to do, Dereck. If you don't get clear, like, hey, this is what we need to do. Okay. Once every 4 months or 5 months, get together as a team, whatever. Once every month, call them and just see how they're doing. Once every quarter, send them a handwritten note. Like, something's got to be whatever you guys feel comfortable with. Yeah. But you have to lay out the rhythm of touch points.
Yeah. Right now we've been doing
quarters.
If you, I'm sorry. We've been doing quarters. Every quarter, we're encouraging that connection. Great. We might need to move that a little closer together. So not allow quite as much time, so that there's more familiarity in how often they're together. I don't know.
Right. And the touch points can be different. One can be a text, one can be a phone call, one can be, a group barbecue or whatever. I mean, you can have it different the entire time, whatever you want to do. Like, here's what we want monthly, or here's what we want every 2 weeks, every 4 weeks, and then every 4 months, or however you want to do the equation. Okay. But come up with the touch points. I would do the in-person ones about 3 times a year. Where it's like, hey, as a head usher, it would be great if you got all your team together 2 or 3 times a year, however you do that. But the touch points need to be at least every 2 to 4 weeks. I wouldn't say any farther than 4 weeks. Okay. Maybe it's, here's what we do monthly, here's what we do quarterly, here's what we do twice a year, or something like that. But you got to lay that out, because if you expect them to figure that out on their own, they're going to interpret it. It's like telling 4 teenagers, for all 4 different teenagers in 4 different homes, be home early. Well, what's early to this kid? Yeah, what does that mean? Is that 10? Is that 12? Is that 2? It's like totally different of what be home early means. Well, I think it's the same thing here. It's like, just have some touch points. What does that mean? Okay. So you're going to have to change the yard markers right now.
Find that.
And you'll probably get a little bit of pushback. Okay. But once the yard markers are established, any new leaders that join will just automatically adapt to the yard markers, because they don't know any different.
Yeah. Yep.
When you change yard markers, that's when you get pushback.
Okay.
Once you establish yard markers, anybody that joins in just accepts it the way it is.
That's good.
So just know you're going to get pushback anytime you change yard markers, but you won't get pushback in future leaders.
Okay. All right.
Because they'll adapt to what already is put into place. But you got to get real clear. Here's what we expect. Here's what we're looking for. And then, of course, you got to figure out what your rhythm of accountability is. Like, how do I actually know they're doing this? Who's running around making sure that this is actually happening, in a way that is not really high maintenance, but in a way that does have accountability? Because you can put out a little document. If nobody does it, who cares?
Sure.
But they got to do it.
Yes.
And I love that you're thinking about that, because that helps as the church grows. And Joe and Jessica join your church 6 months from now. They get in your church. They become greeters. They love it. Yay. But when they become greeters, now they become greeters in a tribe, in a family where there's constant touch points and there's barbecues and relationship.
Yep.
You create that with all of your serve teams, you'll find your church will get a lot stickier for new people.
That's good. That's good.
Yeah. A lot stickier with new people. Have your lead teams create the feeling of tribe. And what will happen again is new people, man, they will stick a lot longer, because they're not just joining some team that sends out a monthly schedule.
Yeah.
Like, that's not relationship.
No, not at all. That's just something else I have to do.
Yeah. And see, they'll think they're Joe and Jessica, whoever we called them, they'll think they're joining up for the greeting team. They're actually joining up for tribe and relationship. They just don't know it.
Absolutely. No question.
And that's the beauty of it. When you can get to that point, dude, you will find an immediate amount of sticky. There's a church that I feel, I won't say the name or even where they're at, but they got a lot to work on.
Okay.
But I'll tell you one thing I coached them on, and they just did really well with it. They got everybody feeling like tribes, and they engaged people really fast. So they took new people, got them engaged, but they were engaged in relationship.
Yeah.
There's all these other components that are like the worship and there's other things that are, and bro, they have gone from about 120 to 330, 350. And I'm like, man, it would be great if they worked on these other things, because that would really grow. Yeah. But they have just done a stellar job of getting new people involved quickly, but they're involving them in community, tribe, and relationship. They just have worked on that, and that alone has almost tripled their church in 16 months.
That's incredible.
And that's all they've done.
Yeah.
That's the big change they've made. So you're on the right track. Yeah. Just apply it, man, and watch what happens. Absolutely. Like, drive it home, and it will work. I'm telling you, drive it home. So
it's good. That's awesome.
Well, dude, man, it's always good hanging out with you. Yeah, always good seeing you. And thanks so much for stopping in and hanging out with us today. And, man, keep up the amazing work, and tell that incredible family I said hello.
Thank you so much, Pastor Chris.
All right.
Thanks for everything, man. See you.